Even one down the sideline, and he's got Cass over the top. Picks it up. Down the sideline. Touchdown. His signature move and his signature performance. Allen, big ball one more time. 58 yards this time.
You're listening to the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker, bringing you UCLA football content all throughout the year for LA Football Network.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing the podcast. We are brought to you guys today by our advertisers. Our advertisers are Bell to Bell Fitness, Shator, a realtor out in Arizona, former Bruin alum, and my main man, Howard Chang, a realtor right here in Los Angeles. Let's go through them, guys. Bell to Bell Fitness is a boxing gym on the West Coast used by their FIT acronym, Fight Inspired Training. My main man, Tony Gonzalez, was the boxing coach for UCLA for over 10 years. He has built this gym on the West Side to learn how to boxing, stay in shape, and give you all the essentials you need to become somebody that is obsessed with boxing and fitness. Make sure to check it out. Go into Bell to Bell Fitness and say you heard about it from the Bruin Bible, and you're going to get a free session with Tony Gonzalez. So make sure to check that out. Shator, my main man. Shator is a licensed real estate agent in Arizona and a lifelong Bruin. He's a current Wooden Athletic Fund donor and football season ticket holder. When not selling houses or going to UCLA games, he loves to travel the country, checking out different arenas, ballparks, and stadiums. If you're looking to make the move to Arizona or know someone who is, please reach out to our loyal friend, Mr. Shator. His phone number is 602-487-3975. Once again, his number is 602-487-3975. Make sure to check that out. And then the local realtor we got out here, Howard Chang. Howard Chang is a local realtor with the Serene team at eXp Realty. Their team has an office right here in Culver City, though they help clients buy and sell homes all over the LA County and the surrounding areas. Howard and his team do a ton of business and are super in tune with the market, knowing winning strategies to give their clients a competitive advantage, have amazing vendor referrals, are a one-stop shop for anything real estate, and just provide a ton of value for their clients. Howard and his partner, Kyle Draper, are UCLA alums and a huge fans of the UCLA football and basketball programs. You often see them at games, tailgating and networking, and staying involved with the UCLA alumni community. They would love to help any fellow alumni with accomplishing their real estate goals. So if you guys have any real estate needs in the LA area, look no further. Howard is your guy. What is up, and welcome to the latest edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host, here with the man, the myth, the legend, the madman. We had ourselves a day yesterday, madman. We went to the UCLA Spring Football Showcase, was the best word to describe it. We were hoping for a spring game. We didn't ultimately get that, but still a blast. Saw a ton of Bruin alumni out there. You know, we got stopped a couple of times, people talking about the show, which was really, really cool. And then we hit the Comedy Store later last night, kind of just on a Will and Madman, kind of just a fun night out, dude. So we had a blast, dude. That was one of the better Saturdays we've had in a while. How is your Sunday treating you, man, as we reflect on the inaugural Spring Showcase with our guy Deshaun Foster and head coach in year one?
Oh, well, Thriller, obviously it's been a nice kind of R&R Sunday to recover. We had a great time, as you mentioned. Spring Showcase by day. You know, Papa Madney was out there as well. We had a great time and hanging out with obviously all the UCLA faithful, over 11,000 strong. So really a phenomenal outcome and an output there, really showing the passion that is starting to revive and rekindle when it comes to UCLA football. So it was a great atmosphere to be out there, just carnival style, both outside of the stadium as well as sort of inside the Rose Bowl walls. So just a terrific day for Bruin spirit, Will. Made me so proud to be an alum as always. And I know we're going to get into the details here shortly. And then you and I topped it off with a fun night in LA and Sunset Boulevard. And had a great 3-hour set at the Comedy Store. Some ups, some downs. It was a great time, though. It was a wonderful time and excited to be talking ball with you today, brother.
Always great to be talking ball with the madman, dude. So much fun on so many different levels. And yesterday was a blast just to kind of see UCLA out there. It was very similar to the practices we had gone to. They kind of just ran a lot of the same drills, but there's a lot of things of note, I think, that we saw out there that we can talk upon for UCLA football moving forward. I kind of came up with this fun exercise and kind of ping pong back and forth, just the top 5 things that we saw at spring practice that gives us hope for next year. And, maybe observations where, hey, we need to improve in this area. This guy is going to be a standout player at his position. Madman, as always, I'm going to let you lead off on this one. Talk to me. What was the first thing you really noticed out of the spring showcase in terms of the team and who stood out to you?
Yeah, Thriller, absolutely. And it was an interesting showcase construct, as you mentioned. I think you and I and many others kind of expected it to be much more of a traditional spring game, quote unquote, over the course of 4 quarters, a lot of 11 on 11. We had a share of 11 on 11, but it was kind of divided into 12 periods. And so there was kind of some one-on-one drills. There was just sort of 1v1 at the line of scrimmage. There was obviously kind of corner wide receiver sort of matchups, and then a share of 11 on 11. There was special teams work, defensive work, offensive work. So we got a nice variety of elements there. It really was kind of a piece of all of the different practices over the course of the spring kind of put together. So it really a showcase in that sense, Will, over a 2.5 hour period. I think the first thing that really jumped out to me, Will, is at the wide receiver position, both Rico Flores and TMA. I thought Rico Flores was absolutely sensational in the one-on-one battles. The first kind of one-on-one battle, he was just lights out in terms of just his ability to run routes and then counter off of his routes. I think there's a very complex tree with Rico Flores. It's a lot of inside, outside, back, inside, a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of misdirection that comes with how his route tree progresses and how he develops. He was sensational. I mean, he was consistently getting open, making catches. He really stood out as a weapon that is going to be a big piece of this UCLA season in 2024. I think we've talked immensely about Loya. I think Loya will continue to be wide receiver 1. We know what Sturdivant gives you in terms of the deep threat. I think this kind of becomes a 3-headed monster now with Loya, Sturdivant, and Rico Flores. So I thought Rico Flores was absolutely sensational. And then what I love to see was TMA getting into the act, particularly in the 11 on 11. And he was absolutely phenomenal. Ethan Garber's even said after the spring showcase, really important for me to build chemistry with my guy TMA. And so to kind of see him evolve really feels like now TMA is probably going to be wide receiver 4, perhaps even wide receiver 3, given what, the rotation could possibly be. But Garber, as you can tell, is a guy that is big on rapport. And you can start seeing that he is getting comfortable, always was deeply comfortable with Loya, very comfortable now with Rico Flores, and he's rekindling that chemistry with TMA. Those are the 3 guys that he seems to be getting a lot of comfort from. I think Sturdivant is going to be the big home run threat, but I'm getting a little bit worried, Will, that because Sturdivant has missed so much time in the spring, that hopefully that chemistry stays strong with him and Garber is going into the fall. But at a wide receiver position, really the first thing that I took away, Flores and TMA really shining offensively yesterday.
Yeah, man. And I think it was the stat that came out. I did a show with Gavin Carlson for the Daily Bruin after this. And it was like he had 4 completions over 10 plus yards in scrimmage. 2 of them went to Flores. 2 of them went to TMA.
Yep.
So it was very consistent on those fronts. And dude, I mean, we've talked about it all spring. This receiving room is loaded, man. Like you pretty much have 3 dynamic slot guys. And Rico Flores, to me, he can give you almost everything you get from Loya, but he's like 15, 20 pounds heavier, may have the same quick feet, maybe a better route runner at the end of the day from what we saw. So. Those one-on-ones. I mean, it's very special talent. I just want to remind the fan base, this guy is not some dude that just transferred here. He was a legitimate 4-star recruit, got offers from Ohio State and Georgia. I mean, what bigger school right now is it than Georgia in college football? This guy could have been on Kirby Smart football team had he chose that direction. Came from Notre Dame. He looks like a professional already. I got the same kind of feeling, a little different body types, but the same type of feeling. When you see him the first time, you're going, oh, man, that's a future pro right there. You know what I mean? It's the same thing I said with Sturdivant. The same feeling we said with Oladejo when he came in last spring. There's just a lot to like there. And then TMA, man, there's just something to say about this guy, man. And his dad came up and stopped me in the bathroom before we actually met up. Wonderful dude. TMA's dad, shout out to you, bro. That was awesome. He came in and he started to talk to us. He's like, I've been, watching your guys' show. He gave us like really great compliments. He goes, "Oh yeah, my son's on the team." I'm like, "Who's your son?" Titus. I'm like, "You mean TMA? Like that guy's amazing." Like, yeah, his son is, I mean, well on his
Phenomenal.
way to carving a niche role, for this team and being a very important player moving forward. I talked about, the offers that, our guy Rico got. I mean, TMA was offered by Nick Saban to come to Alabama. He went to
Not too
Central
shabby.
Florida, followed his high school quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, to University of Central Florida, then comes out to UCLA, has really kind of stepped up. So these guys are dynamite, and we didn't even get to see the best of Lloyd. We didn't even get to see Sturdivant, period. So, dude, there's just a lot to ride home with on the wide receiver room. I couldn't agree more. My second point, from what we saw from spring practice, the O-line was a little chaotic. I think we can all agree that was a big point in spring, and I think it's a big emphasis on why they're investing in a couple new players coming in. Ruben Unije is coming from Louisville. He had stopped at Houston as well. That was his initial, school of choice. And then we got Mokiao-Atimalala coming from UNLV. But, I think for me, the offensive line has its issues, but I'm actually looking more at the defensive line when it comes to this. Toia, we know what he is. He's an anchor to this defensive line. He's a special player. He's special talent. We need to find some edge rushers when it comes to this, man. A champion, we saw him kind of roaming the sidelines. It's impossible to miss this dude. We actually saw first-round pick Oluwafemi walking down there, freshly drafted off the Colts. How cool was that he was on the sideline? But I think we got to go back into the portal, and maybe get another edge rusher to complement. It worries me a little bit that a champion is not at full 100%, kind of similar to what Sturdivant is. And, the edge rushers we've seen, Jacob Busic is a fine player. Devin Aupu coming from Notre Dame, solid rotational guy. I like the potential of Grant Buckey, but I really think we're going to need some more pass rush firepower if we want to reach that ceiling of 7 to 8 wins. And I know we've started to line up Oladejo maybe as an edge rusher in certain situations, certain packages. I prefer him back at linebacker, given how dynamic he is there and how fast he is in the open field. What was your takeaway with the D-line? Because I think this is a group where if you add a guy or two, and I know Champion might be coming here pretty soon, another guy out there with Toia, it's not going to be as special as last year, but it could be damn good with just another addition on that line.
Yeah, Will, I completely agree with you. I think there's ingredients there with the defensive line and really that front seven, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a cohesive unit yet. And I think that's kind of what we're getting to. I would go even as far as saying, Will, we maybe need one or two more pieces. It's because you can see that with Toia on the interior defensive line, wherever he sort of lines up, he's going to be drawing attention, in that 3 gap, and whatnot. And then a weak side off of that, you can really sort of exploit with some really powerful edge rushing. And so in an ideal world, you kind of want 4 or 5 guys. You want sort of a couple edge rushers, 1 or 2 guys on the interior, and then, a linebacker that can kind of go side to side. That's kind of how, in an ideal world, you want 5 kind of big time playmakers right now on that defensive front seven. Obviously, you want 7 great players, but if you get 5 really good playmakers, you have the ability to really alter the shape of a game from a defensive standpoint from that front seven. And right now, UCLA feels like they've got 3 guys, and so we're trying to figure out how to sort of manipulate and move those guys around in terms of different permutations. But it does feel like it's a little light in the cupboard, both in terms of quality of talent, but also in terms of depth. We know what we've got in Toia. We've talked ad nauseum about how important he is. And I think we're both leaning in very heavily that once a champion gets on the field, he's going to be an absolute stud on the edge. Will, we just sort of saw him even in just, sweats, in a sweatshirt and sweatsuit and kind of a track kind of pants situation on the sideline. The guy just looks like an absolute specimen. You and I were kind of quoting Space Jam where, we were saying, you can't teach how he looks in that sweatsuit. You can't teach it. I mean, he's an absolute physical specimen, total stud. He's going to come in there and make a huge piece. And then you got Oladejo, who potentially is going to be, on the other side of that edge at times, and then be at on that outside linebacker situation. So those are your 3 great athletes that you really have. I think you need 5 great athletes in that front seven to really make an impact defensively. Kane Medrano is terrific, very serviceable. Keanu Williams is really solid, has his moments, but you kind of need one or two more pieces. Now we're hoping John Vaughns comes back strong. I think him sort of being in that hybrid safety linebacker role, that kind of becomes your fourth grade athlete on the front seven. And then you kind of need that fifth grade athlete off of the transfer portal. So that's kind of, I think, what we're really alluding to here. Guys like Busic and others, really nice rotational pieces, but you can't necessarily rely on them of being kind of consistent starters and stars, particularly in this Big Ten. So it felt a little light in the war chest, Will, in that front seven, to your point. But I think building off of Toia, a champion, Oladejo, hopefully you get John Vaughns, and then I think you need to go get a fifth kind of stud in the portal.
Totally agree, man. D-line, it's close, man. If a champion comes back, it's the potential that he possesses. We just need one more guy, I feel like, off that edge. Busic and, Alpu, I think it's like NBA terms. Like if you have that guy as a starter, you're kind of feeling dicey. Yeah. If it's a rotational player, you're feeling really good about it. You know what I mean? So I like these guys a lot. So, let's hold our hat that maybe they can get another edge guy in the portal to kind of complement this D-line and what Toia has going for them to start, man. So point number 3, back to you, Madman. We were out there. We saw the whole practice. We've watched, multiple spring practices this entire, campaign. It's been a lot of fun. Some of my favorite times in March was us kind of going watching some games and practices ourselves. Talk to me, brother. What did you see? What's your third most interesting, takeaway from the spring showcase?
Yeah, Will, and I think it's sort of related to point 4, and we'll sort of lean into it, and it's on the other side of the trenches, and it was the offensive line. And I think that it's a work in progress. I think just, simply put, I think the concern was you didn't hear very much from TJ Harden at the spring showcase. You didn't hear very much from Keegan Jones in the spring showcase. Carlson had some moments, kind of getting in off tackle and whatnot. But the reason that the running game and the running backs really didn't make a ton of noise on Saturday was just because there was no setting of the line of scrimmage. And the offensive line was consistently kind of getting blown up. And there were probably 5 or 6 plays, whether it was Ethan Garbers, whether it was Justin Martin, where we were watching the play and they got the ball up, but they only got the ball up because it was in a kind of a practice scenario. You and I both kind of turned to each other and said, man, if that was in a game situation, that's probably a sack or that's probably a penalty. So you can tell the offensive line is really struggling right now to even hold the line of scrimmage, which quite frankly, Will, is a concern, especially when we've talked about kind of the pieces on the defensive line. What does the defensive front seven consist of? No Jay Toia out there, no Collin Champion out there. So given that neither guy was out there and the offensive line was struggling so much to set, the line of scrimmage and really hold things, whether it was in 1v1 situations or 5v5 situations, that has to now be priority A, B, and C. We talked about it. Unije coming, I think, is going to be huge. Obviously, the kid from UNLV, I think both of those kids are going to step in and be starters right away. I think it's a situation where you got to be able to fill those gaps. So I'm really encouraged that Deshaun is seeing it and really fortifying the depth of the offensive line because, Will, that's the key here. When you look at how comfortable Garbers looked offensively, we talked about this quartet of receivers that we're so excited about. We know what TJ Harden brings to the table. We know the gadget that is Keegan Jones. We know the sure-handedness of Matavao and his blocking ability. The key is the offensive line. As long as Garbers can get some semblance of time here, this is an offense that's going to be able to move the ball very seamlessly with a lot of veteran leadership. So offensive line, Will, the lack thereof was a concern. I'm holding my breath here with the fortification here with these 2 reinforcements. They might need to go get a 3rd reinforcement, to be honest with you, just in terms of where we are.
Yeah, and, it speaks a lot to Deshaun realizing what he has with this line and going out and getting new guys to come in. It's very encouraging, man, because if you add 2 new starters, let's say, they're like a B-, B, those are very dramatic improvements from where this line is right now, just to be very frank on the situation. So Unije, Makaheli coming in. We welcome you guys. We are excited to have you guys at UCLA Bruins. This is a big, big deal to help out with the offensive line. We've talked about it ad nauseum. I mean, I sound like a broken record. The Big Ten is a trenches conference. You got to strengthen those lines when you go into the Big Ten because that's how it's built. We're doing that through the transfer portal, and these guys are going to hit out in a big way. Number 4, man, I've got a very interesting point. I think I'm impressed with the safety play. Brian Addison made some really nice reads, not only in the pass game, but he kind of came up on some run plays where you could just see how wiry and athletic this guy is. 6'4". He actually was supposed to come to UCLA with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, has that extra year of COVID, went to Oregon, had a long career, former wide receiver. But I just want to say where we were at in the initial transferring of a Kamari Ramsey and a Humphreys and a D'Anton Lynn, safety was one of the biggest issues. And I believe it was, before Chip Kelly ultimately resigned, he was like, listen, we got to get safety right. That was like one of his quotes that made it out to the media. Brian Addison looks really good. Ramon Henderson looks really good. I just want to give credit right now to Cody Whitfield because I think what he's doing is so underrated with that secondary. When he inherited that secondary, it doesn't take an Einstein to tell you that was the Achilles heel of the UCLA defense for years with Chip Kelly. Like that was problem number 1, and they just could never find a way to solve it. Year 1 with Cody Whitfield becomes Pac-12 defensive back coach of the year, in terms of how he's improved. We've seen Kirkwood kind of find his stride. He had that big interception against USC, against Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick. You saw his confidence soaring. Even in the spring game, I know he dropped the pick, but he made an initial great read in the first play of 11 on 11. You see his confidence is sky high right now. Davies is a very consistent performer out there. And, I got to be honest, the new kid, Jameer Benjamin, was making some plays out there. He looks like he's going to be, challenging KJ Wallace maybe for some play time in that slot. But for where we were from losing Lynn to losing the guys, and Lynn was a, NFL secondaries coach. Like, this is a real dude that can play. To where we are now, I didn't think we were going to get there, like, to a place where I feel comfortable with this unit that fast. So I'm very, very impressed. What do you think about the secondary play and, specifically the safeties in Addison and Henderson coming from Notre Dame?
Oh, yeah. Well, you nailed it. I thought Addison was absolutely phenomenal, and he was really very disruptive in all of those 11-on-11 situations where in the event when Garbers had time or when he rolled out or when Justin Martin was rolling out or thinking about running or when Luke Duncan was going through his progressions, it just felt like Addison was disrupting everything that was out there when they needed to really throw the ball down the field and really kind of set that tempo. We've talked about it, Will. We've been looking for that leader, right? Who's going to take over from Stephen Blaylock 2 years ago? We thought it was going to be Kamari Ramsey. And then there was this void of, okay, all these guys that have left, who's going to step in there? I think we found our answer in terms of Addison becoming the leader of this secondary. I thought he was absolutely sensational in terms of just the leadership on the field, calling guys out, moving guys around, really sort of taking that role of the primary sort of force in the secondary. I thought that was sensational. You said it, Will. I thought Kirk would look really spry, really confident. He was kind of reading the quarterback's eyes really well, reading wide receiver hips really well. I mean, that first sort of deep slant, inside slant, he sort of jumped it off of Garbers, just couldn't quite hang on, but it was absolutely a phenomenal play there. And then I was really impressed. I mean, Jordan Davies and Flores had some one-on-ones where, I mean, my goodness, I mean, Jordan Davies was wearing Flores like a suit. I mean, it was some really nice one-on-one competition. And then I love seeing Jameer Benjamin, to your point, Will, particularly against Quasi Gilmore. I thought the two young kids kind of going at it. It was sort of a glimpse into not just the present, but also the future of UCLA football. And I thought Jameer Benjamin, you're spot on, Will. I think KJ Wallace, we assumed, given his veteran leadership, given just the number of big games that he's played in the SEC against the likes of Georgia and Ole Miss and Clemson, that he was going to kind of step in there and either be one of the four guys in the secondary or definitely be that nickel corner. I think Jameer Benjamin is basically telling KJ Wallace, listen, objects in your rear view mirror are much closer than they appear. And I think that spot for the nickel corner is going to be a really significant one. And it's going to be nip tuck going into the fall. I thought Jameer Benjamin, he's kind of your classic bump and run corner, wants to get into it. he actually reminds me a lot of Darnay Holmes, Will, and just how he sort of approaches the game, the physicality. Loved what I saw out of Jameer Benjamin. So I think all is well from a secondary standpoint. It looked like things were bleak when Ramsey and Humphreys left, but I think UCLA has fortified in a very significant way. And now when you look at Addison, Hernandez, and then you added on the corners with the likes of Davies and Benjamin and Wallace, there's a lot of talent here. I think the secondary is going to be really solid going into that Big Ten play, particularly against some teams that have some questionable receiving cores. I think UCLA is going to look at their secondary matchups going into the crux of Big Ten play, where they're either going to be at parity or it's going to be advantage UCLA for the majority of the season.
Yeah, there's a lot to like from what we've seen, and I just didn't expect it to be rebuilt this fast. After losing a guy like Troy Ramsey, where, that guy's a future pro. That's not a guy that grows on trees, you know what I mean? So for them to kind of rebuild that unit up in such a unified way, very, very excited from what we've seen on that. You get the last point, brother. The 5th point from Spring Showcase. What is it and why, my brother?
Well, so, can go a number of different ways here. Obviously, I think, again, Garber's command of the offense was evident. He was a little bit up and down in terms of just his throws and the accuracy, but just his reads, his poise, the leadership, just the mastery of the offense was obvious. He's clearly QB1. I think the Spring Showcase also showed that Luke Duncan is QB2 in my mind. I think he has passed Justin Martin, and I think we need to sort of have that conversation very clearly. When you talk about some of the deep balls, Will, some of those deep balls down the sideline, even some of his misses, Will, were just, he put the ball right on there. And, his ability to kind of throw those deep routes down the sideline, but just his ability to read defenses. He was going through his progressions, the zip on the ball, the mechanics, the footwork was absolutely significant and much different than Justin Martin. Love Justin Martin, but again, Justin Martin was not throwing the ball down the field, reverting to the checkdowns, I think, far too often, bailing on his progressions far too often. It was kind of, hey, if that first read isn't there and the checkdown isn't there, I'm just going to take off and run. I think Luke Duncan's sort of mastery of the complexity of the playbook, the variations, being able to read defenses, he is, to me, clearly QB2. And I think if this curve continues, we're going to be talking about Luke Duncan, being that backup to Garbers going into the fall. So I think that was a big takeaway for me, Will. We were leaning that way. We saw it in practice, and we said, well, let's see on a bigger field, bigger stage, 11,000 people there, more 11 on 11. Is this going to hold up? It absolutely held up. So to me, Luke Duncan passing Justin Martin as QB2 is sort of half of bullet number 5. And the other half, Will, much more understated. It's not as sexy a conversation or a topic, but one that has been very important to UCLA football the last several years, and one that has been the difference between oftentimes a win and a loss in some key situations of the kicking game. I think Mateen Pagani is clearly, the first kicker. And I think he showed some tremendous range there, hit a couple kicks, that were 40 and above. I think Pagani now fortifies UCLA's kicking game in a very significant way. And I think that's going to play a big role, particularly in these road games in the Big Ten. Tough weather situations, field position is going to play a big role. You're going to need to find a way to score points on certain drives where you're not getting a lot of yards. Pagani kind of fortifying that kicking game, I think, is a big piece of the puzzle here. So Pagani and Luke Duncan share my bullet number 5, Will.
I love it, man. Yeah, the kicking game, we made a couple 40-yarders, in that spring game. The cause for celebration, man. There's a lot of exciting things going on with Pagani. I mean, we've been talking about it all spring. Luke Duncan just looks poised, looks well above his age and what he is, for his first spring ball because he was out last year. Duncan looks like he's got the goods to be a starter in about a year. So really, really excited with that. Guys, loved the Spring Showcase. Really pumped to get back out there again. We got a couple more spring practices, and then we are off for the summer. Don't worry, man. We're going to have you covered at the Bruin Bible. Lots of great stuff coming all throughout the summer. We got some really good stuff down the line. We got a very special guest coming on
yes,
Tuesday.
We do.
So stay tuned for that. But we are out, guys. Officially, we'll be talking with you guys soon. Bruin Bible, we are officially